We are going to continue the story project. Okay? Thank you. I appreciate that because we had to work out some details, but we're going to do it with the library. And it's going to be a big deal. And we're going to take it to the next level. And our next one, first one really, after Sharon's, is March 10th. We're going to do it with the library downtown at the Knights of Columbus Hall. And our first one is going to be celebrating Tava, as a lot of people you know, a.k.a. Pikes Peak, America's Mountain, Mountain of the Shining Sun. I mean, it's got all these wonderful names, but we think the one that goes back the furthest is Tava. And we have a wonderful guest coming from Fort Duchesne, Larry Cesspooch, and he's going to come out and he's going to tell the creation story. There's very few First Nation people, host nation in this case, that actually have a creation story with this beautiful, amazing mountain here. And Sharon was very aware of all of this, and she was a big, she loved Tava, of course, and I know you know that. But so our first one is going to be, we're actually going to do a really lovely celebration of Tava, and it's stories from America's Mountain. So we'd love to see you at the library. No, it's going to be at the library, Knights of Columbus Hall, March 10th. And so Kat's going to help us kick that off too. She's got a wonderful project that she's working on celebrating Tava. If it's safe to say, Kat, it's a musical of sorts. With her theater background, it's going to be phenomenal. We also have two storytellers. We're going to have a Sasquatch story, and we're going to have an amazing woman that's going to come and tell the story through puppets. So it should be very exciting. We'd love for you to be there. Honor Sharon, honor the story projects, Smokebrush, et cetera, and let's get this thing to the next level. And we can honor Sharon in so many ways, and this is probably the most beautiful and amazing because I know you were all super close with her, and I know you're going to tell some wonderful stories about her. But just a legacy is can be such a wonderful thing, you know. And to be able to carry her legacy on of the story project through the library, and we're going to archive it and film it, and we're just going to really have a lot of fun with it. And I would love for you all to come. So, without any further ado, 7 o'clock, March 10th, Knights of Columbus Hall. Look for it. We're going to be doing lots of marketing and advertising for it with the library. And without further ado, Kat's going to come up and try to wrangle this thing. I know it's going to be kind of all over the place, but I think it's okay. I know Sharon kind of wanted everything like this, but you know what? We're going to break a few rules tonight. We're going to have a lot of fun. And I just, from the bottom of my heart, thanks for being here, because man, was she awesome. Man, was she awesome. So let's hear it for Sharon, and let's hear it for Kat Tudor. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for being here tonight. Sharon's here. She is smiling. I want you all, just for a moment, just close your eyes and see Sharon smile. And her hair. And just for a minute, just be in her presence. That amazing laugh. And then sometimes just the infuriating thing that she just said. You know? Just every once in a while. But I stand up here. I've never been the MC for Story Project before. Sharon was always the MC, and then Patrick, and Patrick can't be with us tonight. But Sharon told me I could do it, and so here I am. And in fact, when she started the story project, she announced I'd be telling a story. She told me right before. So I did. I told a story, and then from then on, whenever somebody couldn't show up or something happened, she'd grab me, usually right there in the hall. She'd say, "Kat, you're telling a story tonight because so-and-so can't be here." And that is what is so great about stories. Now, I'll tell you, it's a lot harder to put on a play, you know, or a dance concert, or there are a lot of things, but stories, we all have them, we all love them. Who here has cried at the Story Project? Who's almost wet their pants laughing? I mean, it's been every night it's a whole new cast of characters, and it's mostly true. I know once or twice I exaggerated a little bit in one of my stories, but she wanted it to be true storytelling, and I think it was the truth. I think we came together, not just here across the street, back under the bridge, Colorado Avenue. We just get together, and what Sharon said was just, we'll tell the truth. We'll tell true stories to each other. And I love that. I'm so really happy that we're going to keep doing it. I hope you'll all tell some stories. They want me to coach people now how to tell stories. And I do coach people how to do various things, so I'm hoping it'll work out. Sharon never taught me her secrets, and she never coaxed me or coached me. So she did coax me, she didn't coach me. So I'm trying to step into some big shoes, and I don't know. Maybe I'll need some help from some of you who can teach me how to teach other people how to tell stories. The main thing I think you've got to do is just have a beginning. And I've been trying to think, how did I meet Sharon? And I'm just not sure, but I think it might have been in this place called Counterpoint. Anybody ever go to the Counterpoint? Yeah? Yeah, well, as a youth, I had a performing career at Counterpoint that Sharon, of course, covered. Of course, Sharon was there. Sharon would just sometimes follow me around doing odd things and write about them in Spring's magazine. And she's largely responsible for my entire career, because I think without her, I can't believe any of the other arts reporters in town would have found me at Counterpoint. But she did, and she was so just thrilled about covering and being there and thinking we're all great, and she was my great friend and great supporter, and as the one who's put me in front of this mic tonight. And that was the beginning, I think, was maybe somewhere back there in those Counterpoint days. And then the only other thing I can think of, there's got to be sort of a middle to your story, right? And so the middle for me, I guess, would be the Smokebrush Theater, where Sharon would sometimes come and want to be a stage manager. And Sharon's a way better writer than she was a stage manager. But she was an enthusiastic supporter. She was at every show. She was, so I'm going to say that was the middle. And then I'm going to say you got to kind of wrap your story up. And so with Sharon, it really was the story project. And she freed me from the theater and just let me stand up in front of a microphone and make stuff up. But truth. And it's true making up. And that was a real gift, and I will always love Sharon and tell stories in her honor. So thank you all tonight. Now, I have no idea how this goes next. I know various people have stories about Sharon, and yes, Julie's gonna go. Thank you.
I just wanted to say thanks again to Smokebrush and Kat and Don and Lee and Mitzi and all the people that helped to put this on. How's that? And I'm curious, who brought the bottle of tequila back there? Because that just reminds me of a trip that our family did with Sharon to Mexico, so it's good to see that. And of course, she loved traveling and collecting things from all over the world. I know Sharon wouldn't like this, but I'm gonna read a little bit. This was something that we put together for her graveside eulogy in it. And Sharon's death was fairly sudden. And so I know a lot of people here tonight were like, wait, we didn't even know what happened. How'd that happen so fast? And it really was fast. But I think she had a really good last couple of years, especially with Jamin, her caregiver. So I wanted to give him a shout out as well, and Jamin and Mitzi and Nancy and Laura Benamotes and Ruthie and a few others that were really there for Sharon at her funeral, graveside funeral. So this is part of that. Sharon Friedman grew up in Chicago, where she had fond memories of sailing with her dad on Lake Michigan. When she turned 18, she headed to Israel to live on a kibbutz. She loved her time in Israel and even hoped that maybe one day she would return or be buried there. But Colorado Springs will have to do, and we'll probably be planting a tree in Israel in her name. Then in the late 70s, early 80s, Sharon sailed into Colorado Springs, where she first lived in an off-grid solar house in Black Forest. Sharon was most proud of her work with the arts community, and especially one of the early hires of Springs Magazine, and of course a founder of the Story Project. And I think there is somebody here who's going to speak more to Springs Magazine. It's great to see some people, but the very first article about Catamount Institute was Springs Magazine, and that was back in like 91, and that was the force in our community for an arts magazine. It was a really big deal that Sharon was such a big part of that. But Story Project, as Kat said, was really Sharon's brainchild. And it had a profound impact, and still will have an impact here in the Springs. As you know, once a month, Sharon would hold Story Project events where community members shared compelling, often humorous, 15-minute stories. Sharon would work with the storytellers, often for many hours, to craft and refine their stories. Again, sorry about the notes, Sharona. The Story Project was enormously successful, and it's great to hear that it's going to continue today. And it's still archived, I believe, at KRCC, and fantastic. I remember hearing it on KRCC, and it was just exciting. To recognize her numerous achievements, Sharon was awarded many awards. There's one right behind me right here. She was the matron of the Arts B. Vadenberg Foundation. And that was fairly recently. I think that was only about 4 or 5 years ago. Just to name a few of the recognitions that she had over the years. Sharon had a deep love and sensitivity for more than human animals, especially her dogs, Jacob, Esther, Milton, Batia, just to name a few. She would often tear up even just talking about the plight of elephants. Sharon also loved children, and many exhausted mothers, including myself, especially myself, maybe Mitzi over there, Sarah, felt like Sharon was really a huge part of their kids' childhoods. And just a couple quick stories. I remember my daughter Sierra over there, and Sharon, when Sierra was a little girl, they did beading together, and they made earrings, like the earrings that I'm wearing here. And Sharon used to drive Sierra in 2nd grade to swim practice, and one of the days Sierra hid in the backyard, and Sharon couldn't find her, and she was getting ready to call the police. Where's Sierra? Oh my gosh, I'm responsible for this 8-year-old. Yeah, so many stories. She was kind of like a bubby, Jewish, in-town sort of relative to our family. And oh my gosh, Sky over there, he has more Sharon stories too, but one that we recall was Sharon, before Jamin came along, Sharon needed people to drive her places because her eyesight was kind of going. So of course she asked Sky. And Sky is like, oh yeah, I'm up for that gig. Well, about 2 hours into it, Sharon was doing so much backseat driving that Sky said, Sharon, if you say one more thing, I'm gonna drop you off at American Furniture. And I think you did drop her off at American Furniture. No. Okay. Over the years, one could walk into many of Sharon's numerous homes. She had many, from Manitou to Garden of the Gods to Cheyenne Canyon, and you would feel her warm hospitality. You would feel the art of her artistic environment, and you'd instantly know that you were among somebody who embraced creativity. We will remember Sharon for her knowledge of and her dedication to the arts community, the Jewish community, of course her dazzling big curly hair, warm smile, and loving spirit.
Hi, everybody. I've been thinking about what I might want to say tonight, and one of the things that comes to mind is pepper, because I was grinding some pepper on something, and it made me think of Sharon because she loved pepper. For a period of time, pepper was her thing, and she was always asking for pepper when we'd have a meal together, and we ate together a lot. So that's one of my fond memories of her. Another thought I had was music. We shared a love of dancing and of music, and any kind of music, live or otherwise. And dancing with her was one of my favorite things. She and I had a very similar feel of the music, and it even reminds me a little bit of my father and how he felt music. So we'd sometimes dance together, and it was really sweet. And just her hands, something about Sharon's hands, right? The way she would touch you was really, really beautiful. She had a very gentle, loving touch. And another thing that I think about is one time, actually this went on for a long time, Sharon, my son's father was not calling my son, and it was really hard on my son, and Sharon decided that she was going to call him every single day, and she may have called him many times a day. She blew up his phone. That's the kind of person, a lot of you know this about Sharon, right? That she was a champion for many causes, and if she had felt strongly about something, she put her energy into it, and she would call him and leave messages on his phone to please call my son. It was really something else. So these are just some of the special things I remember about my Sharona. Who's the next short person? Yes, Sue Ellen.
I tried to dress like Sharon tonight. Yeah, as much as I could possibly do. My husband Bob, who's here, and I did the story project, and so we got disciplined from our 45-minute fabulous story we had to tell about our wedding story, and we had to go to Sharon's house many, many times for her to get it cut down to 15 minutes, and we did a pretty good job, but that was really, of course, special to get to do that for her, and it was fun for us too. But the other thing is, which is a very short thing that I have, because after I show you what I brought, I have a very important person to introduce. So when I met Sharon when she pretty much first came to town in the 80s, and I was just envious of everything about her. So I wanted to be smart like that. I wanted to be able to write like that. I wanted to be able to do a lot of things that she did. But the most important thing that I did that I think probably nobody else in here did was this. This is from 1988, I think, 1988, yes. It didn't quite work out, but I did my best to try to look like her. And now I want to introduce the publisher of Springs Magazine, Michael Gardner. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Michael Gardner. Sharon and I were co-publishers of Sunrise Publishing, which published, among other things, Springs Magazine from about 1983 to when the business dissolved in 2010. And as I'm thinking back, I just was beginning to realize how impactful Sharon was on my life and how many things that I continue to carry forward in my life from what I learned from her. And so I'd like to share with you some of the things that I learned from her, beginning with how we first met. So in 1983, after Springs Magazine had published a few issues, we were in the market for a new salesperson. So I put an ad in the paper, and Sharon responded to that and came in for an interview, and I interviewed her for a while and thanked her, and then I tried to decide whether I should hire her or not, and I decided no. And I'm kind of embarrassed to admit it now, but the reason I said no was because of that picture that Sue Ellen had up there. And Sharon had come to the interview, and her hair, I mean, you know, Sharon had the most beautiful, curly, wonderful hair, but on that particular day, she had teased it out. And it was at least twice the size that Sue Ellen. And she was sitting on my couch with this big window in the back, and all I could see was this halo of hair. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is kind of intimidating. And I wonder if clients would be intimidated too. And so I said no. So the next day, before I could even call her, she called me and she said, well, did I get the job? And I said, oh, well, we're still interviewing. And then, of course, the next day, she called again. You obviously know Sharon pretty well. And I said, no, I'm sorry, we're kind of going in another direction. And she said, okay. And then the next day she called and she said, I really think you should hire me. I don't understand why you're not hiring me. And so I reluctantly admitted, I said, you know, I was really kind of overwhelmed by your hair. And she said, what? That's it? She said, I'm going to come over tomorrow and we'll talk. And so the next day she came over and her hair was considerably more sedate. And she said, okay, is that it? Can I get hired? And I said, yeah, okay. You're good. So the first lesson I got from Sharon was A, don't judge someone by their hair or lack thereof, and B, don't take no for an answer, because Sharon was somebody who, if you said no and it wasn't a hard no, she took that as a maybe. And pretty soon it became a probability or a probable. And so I learned from her that if you really want something, persistence and being tough about it really pays off. Now, the next lesson I got from Sharon was a little bit more painful, because I grew up as an only child, and what they say about us can at times be true. When I started Springs Magazine, I was not a particularly inclusive person. I was the kind of person that liked to make decisions and then let people find about them afterwards. And then if you know Sharon, you can only imagine how delighted she was to find someone who would make decisions and she didn't have to worry about it. Well, quite to the contrary. Sharon told me repeatedly that you are a crappy leader. You need to communicate more to me, and you need to be more inclusive with all of us. And I took it to heart, although it took a while and we had some conversations, but I took it to heart. And it was really one of the best lessons I have ever learned. And it really did a lot to help our fledgling business at the time. The next thing that Sharon taught me was that you're only as good as the problems that you can solve. And everyone has heard or seen the bumper sticker, "Shit happens," and sometimes you step in it. Well, I remember the first time that we made a big mistake on an ad that was one of Sharon's clients. And I was really concerned about how to tell her. I shouldn't have been concerned because she was a master at dealing with these kinds of things. And one of the things that she did was that she would go see a client before they even found out there was a mistake. And she would work with them, and she would make it right, and they would be actually happy that something had happened. So I learned from her that if you are honest about something and you approach it proactively, good things can happen. So it was a good lesson for me. Now, Sharon was, in my mind, a little bit like a samurai, because one side of her had an edge, and she could be Chicago tough, if you know what I mean. But there was another side of her was, deeply compassionate. And during the time I knew her, I knew she loved her friends and her husbands almost as much as she loved her dogs. I don't know why, but her dogs had this really special place in her heart, particularly her beloved Esther, who was a sweet, sweet yellow lab. And she doted on that dog, and they had this deep understanding and connection. And when Esther developed cancer of the jaw, Sharon took her to the very best facility that was available. She was like a Mother Teresa to Esther. And I was surprised how her toughness gave way to this deep and abiding tenderness. When Esther's struggle came to an end, I had never seen such deep grief. Sharon's heart was broken. Other dogs followed, but none quite touched her the way Esther did. Now, I believe to some degree we can choose how we remember others. And for me, the image that I most remember is of Sharon at her 50th birthday party, which was at Poor Richard's. She was surrounded by friends. She was strong, healthy, vibrant, and at the pinnacle of her career. I looked at her and I could see her beaming, and I don't think I'd ever seen her so happy. So that's the Sharon I'll always remember, beautiful and empowered and on top of the world. Thank you, Sharon.
You heard the story. Michael, where are you? Gardner. Nice to see you again. Haven't seen you in a while. But I was told Batia was her love dog. This is a story. I don't know if Sierra and Skylar know this. This is how Sharon got Batia, the dog, a little black dog she loved so much. And I was the catalyst for it. So Sharon and I had many, many, many experiences together. And one weekend in April, we went down to Taos. I think we were going to the film festival. Beth and Bob used to go a lot. I said, let's stop at La Vida because there's a great bakery there. And neither of us would ever turn down a bakery. Either would you guys over there. I know that. So she said, yeah, let's stop there because my old best friend from the 70s from Colorado Springs, Yolanda, I don't know, Michael, if you remember her. I didn't really know her. She said, I think she lives there, so maybe we could talk around and ask if anybody knows her. So we go to La Vita, and we're walking down the street, and she sees this guy walking with a little black dog. And we're behind the dog and the guy. And she said, the dog turns around and looks at her, I swear to God. And I mean, I was there, I saw it. And she said, I want that dog. So she runs up to him, this is how I remember it, and said, oh, hi, or whatever, and is this your dog? And he said, actually, no. The dog is up for adoption. Do you know Yolanda? And the dog is staying at Yolanda's house. And that is, you heard this at the funeral. I didn't see you. She said, oh my God, I've been looking for her. So we go to Yolanda's house, and they reunite. This was her old best friend from Colorado Springs. And she said, well, I want that dog. And she said, okay, you could have it. So we go to Taos, and on the way back, we pick up the dog, and she's driving, and the dog sits all the way home in my lap, little puppy name, and she said, I'm going to name it Batia, which was her mother's Hebrew name, I think, right? Well, you knew it. You knew. Her mother's Hebrew name. And she told me that was the love dog of her life. And if I didn't mention the word bakery, that would have never happened. But, I make magic happen, so. Anyways, great story.
So I'll just tell you very, very quickly, the way that stories reveal themselves to me is in little pockets of memories. And my then husband, the father of my beautiful sons, and I had just moved here, and Sharon reached out to us and welcomed us in the most beautiful way and did a feature on these two new artists in the community, and that was just beautiful. And she fell in love with my sons and called them the Maurice Sendak children, which I thoroughly agree with. These, this is kind of a weird story to tell publicly, but I remember when the father of my children, who's a lovely man, and I parted ways, and it was one of the first times that I had been at a public event where he was and I was. Well, I was on my own, and Sharon was there with her little entourage, and those women surrounded me, and Sharon linked arm and gave the evil eye where it needed to be directed, whether I felt it or not, and it was just so beautiful. And I think one of the things about Sharon for us women is she never felt she had to be meek, that she had to be small, even though she was. She didn't have to perform a female role. She was a strong and vigilant human being who also was a woman who loved being a woman. And I love that. So thank you, Sharon.
Boy, I sure miss her. I'll tell you what, I didn't know her for very long. Story Project was how we got introduced. One Nation Walking Together called me and said, Story Project is doing a Native American heritage episode, and they need 4 Indian storytellers, and could I do this? And now I'm a traditional storyteller. I tell ancient stories. And I said, oh yeah, okay, it's to benefit One Nation. She gave them money, from it, and so sure. And then I found out it had to be a true personal story. And I was like, oh gosh, this isn't what I do. I don't think I can do this. And so I went and met with her at her house, and she coached me, and she talked to me a little while, and she says, you've really had an interesting life, Sabrina. You have these little snippets of humor experiences in your life that other people will find amusing, and we don't get lighthearted stories very often. So why don't you just work on this one about thinking you knew how to tan hides? And I said, oh, I don't know, Sharon. But she coached me. She coached me, and she, I never had anybody so encouraging in my life, ever. Grew up without a lot of love and guidance. And she took the time to coach me, to give me encouragement, which was like a gift that nobody, yeah, I know, I couldn't believe it. And she believed that I could do it and gave me confidence, to get up and rattle on about my little weird stories. And then I was at her house another time, and she we were talking about how much she loves elephants, and she showed me a painting that she had done of elephant. And then she said, all of a sudden, I was ready to go. She says, I've got skeletons in my closet. And I said, I think we all do. And I didn't know what to say. She says, no, I want to show them to you. I was a little nervous, but they were not people, they were skeleton dolls about that tall. And she had dressed them. She had made outfits, dance outfits and tuxedos on some of them. And she just had this box, this enormous box full of skeletons, and they were in the closet. And I said, why do you have these? And she said, I just felt like I should have them, and I made them. And then one had the most enormous penis. And balls hanging down to his knees. And I said, she just showed it to me real proud. She says, yep, well, those are my skeletons. And so I'm really gonna miss this lady. She's a class act. Thank you.
Well, I don't know why that story reminded me of this, but she gave us a big box of stuff that we've been digging through for a few years now. Some people would say these were discards. She knew I'd like all this stuff. Lots of just mysterious kind of ribbons and pictures and little demon figures and fairy princesses. But one thing that was really great was she left us this bag of ancient pot. And so we had to get it out and experiment and see. I'm pretty sure it was from the 70s, is what I'm going to say. Anyway, we all enjoyed it for Sharon. And now, does anybody else have anything indiscreet to say?
Can you hear me with my mask? Yes. Okay, because if not, I'll take it off. Okay. I feel like my husband and I are like the only people, we are literally the only people we know who have not gotten COVID. Okay, I'm trying to keep it that way. I'm knocking on wood, and my daughters are very bullish with us, which feels great. I don't have anything really pithy to say about my times with Sharon. I moved into the Springs from Woodland Park in 2007. 13 years in the mountains had destroyed my ability, I guess, to be around people and have conversations. I didn't have any friends up there. My daughter's now best friend's mom wouldn't let my daughter play with her daughter because I was weird. I wasn't weird, I was sick. But anyway, but I kept hearing about Story Project, but I was so involved with Poetry West that was just what I did. It was all poetry all the time, and I'd never made a Story Project. I don't think I met Sharon until 2016, which is God, it's so hard to believe now. Let me just list my times with Sharon. I visited her house, of course, for Story Project, which I did twice. I went to shul with her once. I won't go back. It's not because of Sharon, but it's just not my thing. And nowadays I'm afraid because of the way society is. I'm actually afraid to gather in that setting. But she was so happy to have me there. And I remember all these people going up to the Torah to have what they called private time with God, you know? And I thought it was amusing, and I told her, because I didn't get in line, because I'm like, how can you have private time when there's like hundreds of people here? But anyway, she did that. She was very, very, religious, very Jewish, very proud of her heritage. Very, very Jewish, yeah. And we went for a walk around Garden of the Gods, and I was amazed to see her get out of the car with Jacob, and in this weird jumper kind of thing with tennis. Anyway, it was very Sharon. She loved her yard. She was very proud of her yard. She loved her backyard. She loved the whole yard. That was the house with the last house with the round living room and all. And the thing is, once I left even the Springs to move to Fountain in 2017, I was just like, that's it. I'm going back to not be around people, to forget how to be, to not be able to converse, all that kind of stuff. I never wanted to come into town, and I should have. This is what I learned from this. I was so proud of myself for hiding out. I'm on some land, and not coming in. I didn't even come in to see Sharon. I honestly didn't know she was ill or anything, and then somebody told me, maybe you, Julie, or Mitzi, that she really didn't recover from the death of Jacob in the summer, and I didn't know that he had died. But Sharon came twice down to Fountain with Jamin. I think twice with Jamin, and other people didn't. So I'm grateful for that. I thought to myself, when I wasn't visiting Sharon, even though I knew about her eyesight, I thought maybe she had millions of friends. I know she had a lot of friends, and then I started thinking, I guess just to torture myself, was she one of those people with millions of friends, acquaintances, but very few close friends? I think I'm wrong. I think I'm wrong on that. And I think there were people there. The last time I tried to contact her was August. I wasn't hearing, not calls, not writing on Facebook. I didn't know how to reach Jamin, which was dumb. And I think I'm hearing tonight that people were with her during that time, August up until, and then she was very ill starting December. So anyway, Sharon loved my poetry, and she let me embed it in my stories. And that was not easy, memorizing all that kind of stuff. So what I like to do is finish up by reading one short thing. They're both short, but a short thing that has the word stories in it, and it's kind of elegiac. And the next one, I haven't had time or whatever really to process about Sharon. I lost 6 people last year. But the Sharon one has just hit me the hardest. I know a lot of it is guilt. I know for me a lot of mourning has to do with guilt, but I'm glad all you people were there. So the other one is a twice removed elegy, because it's not about Sharon. It is about a dog, but it's thrice removed because it's not about her dog. It's about my dog. But I want to read it because of her dog. That's all I've got right now. So here's the first one. It's called Prodigal Solo. Untrained in endings, I slink my way through a city of ghost stories, white denouement that took all gardens with it. That something always endures is hard to imagine. But even in ghost towns, summer comes, and perhaps not in vain. It could be your eyes alone, prodigious revival of one that watch a new day amble and pass away over the verdant hills. And this one was after my dog Andre with an O. I always say my dog Andre with an O, because you go to make a dog tag, they don't have an accent for Andre. I already had the name. No, really, this is something Sharon understood about me. It's like, I'm like, Sharon, you know, if he got lost, but then somebody temporarily got him, you know, and then he got away again, they're going to read his name as Ander. And they'll be calling him, and he's going to be like, who's Ander? You know, I need, or Andra, I need the accent. So I just spelled it phonetically. But anyway, Andre. Andre was from Rocky Mountain Collie Sheltie Rescue, and I know that he was a mix because he had a tiny little body and a really big collie head. And he had pica. So we saved him 3 times from stuff he got into, but we couldn't save him the 4th. So this is, I'm a dog person. Right now I'm like, what's happening with my dogs at home? You know, it's terrible. I apologize if I have to leave early out of worrying about my dogs. Shall I say the heavens are weeping this day after burying the dog who asked nothing of love but love? Should I say the howling winds are gnashing and grieving this paradigm of sorrow? For surely none can be. The day we bury a friend is temperate elsewhere, and a child and dog go romping in a verdant field. Shall I suggest that the body is unholy, in that it is given only to be taken, or that it is holy because it is how we know one another? Shall I wonder at death, at how breath originates and returns to the unknown? Insist that whatever made us is undeserving of its final gift? Perhaps I will say simply, he was here, and no matter what transpires, his light will go on and on, like those dead but dog-eared stars.
Yeah, I was just saying that the beginning, the middle, and the end of my story with Sharon was all rolled into one, since I really haven't been here for too long, living here. But even when I came and was starting to do things with Smokebrush and Marmalade, and I used to play at the Mountain Music Festival, I didn't know Sharon then. So I only knew her with white, curly, big hair, with Jamin, and I remember her dancing. But she used to come to the Healing Sound gatherings that we would do here at Smokebrush, and she would come in and just kind of lay down, find her way. Either sometimes I think she'd sit in a chair, from what I remember, and so I wanted to do some music for her. And I'm going to do one that actually both of them, all of you can take part in if you'd like. It's a good way to just kind of like, Sharon, Sharona. And actually you can just sing on which would be really great, while I do a mantra that really is for the release of her being. It's to release her from the vine into liberation, releasing her from death into liberation on all 3 levels, Triyambakam. So this is a Sanskrit mantra, and we can just start with That's your part. Now some of you might go a little higher to and I'm going to sing the mantra on top of your ahs. So you're going to just keep going, breathe wherever you need to. Oh, that's so sweet. She would love that. She is loving it. Triyambakam yajamahe Sukhandim pushti vardhanam orvarukamiva bandhanam mrityor mukshiyamamritat. Triambakam yajamahe sukhandim pushti vardhanam orvarukamiva bandhanam mrityor mukshiyamam ritat. Triambakam yajamahe sukhandim pushti vardhanam orvarukamiva bandhanam mrityor mukshiyamam ritat. Let your hair out. Sharona, releasing her from the vine, from the physical. So this next mantra, this next chant, speaks to truly bliss-filled embodiment, which she was. This is though for the saint Anandamayi Ma, who actually died in 1982, and she was recognized as just pure bliss-filled. And I get the feeling that that's what Sharon was like. She had so much power, but it came from this kind of well of joy. No matter whether she couldn't see or she couldn't hardly walk, she just had this kind of energetic that was just pure bliss somehow, even through all those challenges. So this Anandamayi, then it goes into Chaitanya Mayi, so this is pure consciousness. Satyamayi, the pure truth, and Parameshwari, the supreme. So it's like everything that is happening for her and in this liberation now. So we can do this in call and response, would be a really good way. Oh, that's easy. Anandamayi, Chaitanya Mayi, Satya Mayi, Parameshwari, Parameshwari. Om. Anandamayi, Chaitanya Mayi, Satya Mayi, Parameshwari, Parameshwari. One more time. Anandamayi, pure bliss. Chaitanyamayi, consciousness. Satyamayi, truth. Parameshwari, all supreme. Parameshwari. All right, Sharon.
I thought Stella was Sharon's favorite. Sharon and I worked together a lot, and we got into little fights all the time. And one of them was after I rescued Stella about 7 years ago or so. She said, "Where's Stella? Where's Stella?" And every time she'd want to see Stella, and I'd bring Stella to SunWater, and it just didn't work out because I have 2 other dogs at home, and they got jealous. But I thought to honor Sharon, I'd bring Stella. So if you could just say a few words, Stella, that would be great. No, you have to be quiet to hear it. Did you hear that? So anyway, thank you.
You know, I've been listening to all these stories and about Sharon, and I kind of did and kind of didn't know what I was going to say tonight, because I felt I wanted to say something, of course. Sharon is a lifelong friend of mine. I misspoke at the gravesite the other day, I think, by saying that she was a co-founder with my mother of Springs Magazine. It was a Wellspring, if I didn't say that right. I'm not sure what I said. But yeah, that was a very important editorial move for Sharon and my mom. And I was 15 when I met her. I was a child when she was producing plays at the Unitarian Church with us. We did Alice in Wonderland / Balloon Princess, and it was / something else. But we had a dolly film showing in the background. She was herding 1,000 children. She was the she was the Duchess screaming, and here's some synchrony for you. Pepper! More pepper! With this huge hat thing on and great, and she was fabulous. And I thought, well, you know, she's all grown up. She was quite accomplished by that time even. But something about what you all said about her being an advocate or drawn to and for children, because I was so young, she left a space open for me, even though I was in that stage, that awkward age, which I'm back in now. Because we couldn't quite friend at that point, but I always felt she was a good person, a safe person, and was all Jake with me. Other things that seemed synchronous to me were the stories about Sharon crying over animals, the thought of hurt in our dumb brethren and cisterns. She's digging it. I don't know what you want. That's the only reason I'm brave enough to get up here. That's another thing. I've been in the theater, woman and child, like I said, I started pretty young, for a long, long time. And Sharon got me up for the story project, and I've never been more mortified in my life, more terrified throughout, not just at the thought of it, but doing it was just like, glad I wore my Depends. And had cushions on my knees so they didn't sound through the whole. And she was just like, everybody says, my biggest advocate, the one who said, you're a star. You're a star. Like there was no question, ever, throughout my life. And I knew, of course, sometimes she was just blowing smoke up my skirt because, it needed to be done. I didn't have a smoky enough skirt or something. But, supportive, genuinely, sincerely. Not in, like, rah, rah, you're great, okay. Yeah. In a Sharon kind of way, which is very substantive, which is very real and true. I don't have all the words to say what goddess place she was coming from, or, how many chakras she had superhighways on, or but yeah, that, what y'all were, I liked your words so much, and I know that she was sitting there going like, yes. I was lucky enough at one point to be of a size where when she was divesting herself, I've got too many clothes. Gave me some really cool clothes that I couldn't even put my arm in right now. And it was weird to me that me being 15 and her being an accomplished woman already, I have no idea what her age was at that time, that we had a chance to be old together. She was probably the only other person on earth who truly knew my mother. My mother was a wonderful person, and those of you who knew her know that. And she was other things too. And just about me and Sharon knew that. And it's indescribable to have a confidant like that, a verifier like that. And she was unabashedly, as in everything else, and bravely, obnoxiously, blessedly, like that. This is gonna, it feels a little bit like it's about me, but, well, heck, this is for the living, isn't it? Sharon? She said it's okay. At my mother's service, at my mother's demise, I was just having to deal with everything, the logistics. They don't teach you this. And there was a thing I was going to read that I wrote at my mother's funeral service. And I was just out of it enough to ask the presiding, the officiator, you got it? You didn't bring it? You don't know what it is? Oh, it's mine. I was supposed to bring it. Now, that wouldn't have surprised Mom any. And Sharon was there, and she was just like, you're a star. It's okay. But I'd very much like to read it here, now, if I may. It's just a little bit of something, something. And she said it's okay if I use notes. If I had one wish, it would have to be this one, since all others pale in comparison. This isn't a wish that would ameliorate the human condition in any way, but it strikes me as the most comprehensive form of justice, enlightenment, and closure that anybody could experience. So that's what I'll go for. I would wish that when we die, we really do see and feel everything we've said and done during our lives, but through the eyes, ears, minds, and hearts of others. There would be few, probably none, who wouldn't experience some degree of mortification to torture them. Perhaps it would make us feel better knowing that as we writhed in the unforgiving light of our own missteps and cruelties, that finally, truly, our pain would be felt and understood by those responsible. Everyone would fully appreciate not only how their actions had affected others, but how other people were really feeling, what they were really thinking. The joy and fulfillment you brought to others, you would also fully experience. Why not? Both sides of that coin would be humbling in a grand way, I think. This would also serve to achieve what is impossible for us in life, knowing one another and acknowledging the connection, the commonality of living as a human individual. One would have to be dead to be that vulnerable, that open. Feeling pain you had inflicted wouldn't actually make you cringe. It would break your heart. Knowing how you truly touched another's heart wouldn't make you proud. It would make you grateful. I thought about wishing for knowledge of all things. Considering there may be only nothingness after all, my fondest desire is, before I cease to be, I want to really see who I was while I was. And to know for certain that those who impacted my existence are aware of their effect on me, even for that short time. Maybe we could all blink out with, "Oh, I see," on our lips. And Sharon is the kind of person that gives you a second chance on that. She was priceless to me, and I will always miss her greatly, and she'll always be right here with me. And you guys, too. Now, somebody help me up out. Thank you.
Well, first, I wanted to thank you all for letting me visit with my friend again through your stories. It's nice to be with her again, so thank you all for that. Skylar, American Family Furniture, put that argument to bed, huh? I like that. I'm gonna remember that one. Where's the nearest furniture store? This is over, okay? Yeah. Well, I don't really have any stories because me and Sharon met just in time to hunker down for the apocalypse. So, but I'll share what I have. She did learn me enough to know that story should have a beginning, a middle, and an end. So, in the beginning. That's thank you. That was for all Sharon's Shebrews and Hebrews out there in the audience. In the beginning, I was at a point in my life where I was making a lot of compromises. And Adonai, in his infinite wisdom, gave me a mentor who showed me what it was like to be uncompromising. And she became my master, and I became her student. Our weapons were our hair. And as I got better and we'd butt heads, we'd lock like Velcro sometimes, and it took days for us to get apart. But she, for those who didn't know, she was a woman of phases. She liked things, for example, she would eat the same foods for 2 and 3 weeks at a time, and change her cravings just in time for me to bring it of my own accord. Every time I try, did you bring me a hot dog? Did you bring me a hot dog? No, no, I'm sorry. Oh, hey Sharon, I brought you a hot dog. Are you crazy? I'm over hot dogs. That was the last 3 weeks. What are you talking about? So that was my middle. And the end is that Sharon shared with me a lot. And she told me everything she felt, unabashed. And I learned everything that she loved, all her favorites, and everything she couldn't stand, everything she hated. And I'm here to tell you, she loved all of you very much. So, thank you.
I have a prepared speech, but Jamin, you brought all these pictures and stuff, and I was trying to remember where I was, and I looked at this one back here, and I was negative 15 years old. But it was a fun time. There are things that bring back events. I actually was swimming right behind Sharon when this dolphin kissed her in the face, seriously. And I thought it was kind of weird to like swim with these trained dolphins, but they were pretty cool. And that was in our family trip where we rarely took other people, but Sharon came along as usual as our bubby, as far as our family. And I looked at the award year from 2017. How many people were in Stargazers that night? It was wow. It was a big crowd, and none of you were there. No, it was amazing. I think there had to be there had to be like 200 people there, and it was pretty cool. That was really a very special moment to see Sharon honored for all the things she brought to the arts and the community. Really neat. One here surprised me though, the Toastmasters Award. I was a Toastmaster too, and I've known Sharon for over 30 years, and we never talked about Toastmasters. So I don't know how we ever got around not talking about that. And then, of course, the Independent Award for Story Project, we all know, and we're here tonight. What I want to talk about, Sharon, I call this one, Who Are We? Sharon Friedman, Who Are We? And it's kind of how we met and her role in the Jewish community. I'm sorry to say that in all the years of the Story Project, Sharon never pushed me hard enough to tell a story. Likely due much more to my general overwhelm with other projects than Sharon's lack of trying. She definitely tried. Of all the requirements that Sharon had for her speakers, I think the most onerous for me was to try and give a speech without the notes. That kept me off the stage. So tonight I have my notes. Sharon, I'm sorry. The second most onerous was to come under Sharon's editorial control, as many have known, right? And so you had to get through those two things. That was a pretty gate to get through to get up here. So tonight I'm able to do both of those, but Sharon's Toastmaster skills are with me. All right. So I came to know Sharon soon after we moved to Colorado Springs through our relations in our small but tight Jewish community. In those days, we not only had a temple, but a very active Havurah, which is a friends group with lots of activities, movie nights and Shabbat dinners, and then the monthly reading groups. But we didn't have anything very political. And that was, for a bunch of Jews, not having something political was kind of weird. And it was. So there were numerous attempts for starting a political arm of the Havurah, but of course, being the non-political, political organization we were, there were many debates and very little action. But eventually, none were successful until the embarrassing Amendment 2 anti-gay initiative was passed in Colorado in 1992, shortly after we got here, very shortly after we got here. That was our introduction. For those who forgot, or would like to forget, the amendment prevented municipalities from enacting anti-discrimination laws to protect gay, lesbian, or bisexual people. To say the least, it was an embarrassing moment for Colorado, and especially Colorado Springs, where the amendment was authored by some of our far-right citizens. While Sharon wasn't the leader of our political group, She was an active member of the Jewish Voices for Justice. How many of you have heard of the Jewish Voices for Justice? Yeah. We marched in almost all the gay pride parades for years and wrote newspaper editorials. I was elected the president of the club because nobody knew me, but one night true story, one night they actually put my phone number in the paper for people to join, and we got 20 calls on my answering machine. 17 of them were glowing and nice, and 3 I would never repeat in public, and to this day, one of them still haunts me. Yeah. We reminded others in the Jewish Voices for Justice about Rabbi Hillel's quote written on the back of our Focus on Gefilte Fish t-shirts. How many people still own a Focus on Gefilte Fish t-shirt? All right. They were beautiful. They were the colored rainbow trout with a Jewish star necklace around its neck. Yeah, they're collector's items now. And if you got the right version, on the back it said, Rabbi Hillel's quote, "If I am not for myself, who will be for me? If I am only for myself, what am I? And if not now, when?" Years after the Jewish Voices for Justice, as we came to know it, JVJ, was not very active, but Sharon called several times over the years to ask me to dust off our banner so she and others could march in the parade each year. And they did it for years after the group ceased to exist. So as I think of Sharon, I think of a lot of political conversations in our kitchen. But I also think of her first and foremost as a Jewish activist, always concerned about justice issues and often incensed about the politics of our times, especially fairly recently, whether the issues were Jewish related or not. From her early days living on kibbutz to her later days fighting as she could for social justice, Sharon was always politically and socially engaged. On a side note, Sharon was also quite engaged with other gefilte fish issues, as she attended more than 25 of our Passover Seders over the 30 years I came to know him, and she was a lead cook the night before every Passover. Sharon was renowned, along with Mitzi and Julie, for preparing, and me, I was the leader, for preparing the eggplant fungato, a wonderful savory Sephardic dish with eggplant and feta cheese. So yummy. It's really good. Because in conclusion, if you're Jewish, you know there's no justice without an ash.
I want to say thank you to everybody that made this evening possible. My childhood was rough, and I've spent my life searching for community. And I'm a teacher, and I've been a teacher for 39 years, and I still have a couple to go. And over that time, I've worked with kids that are really hard to reach, and the way I've learned to reach them is through story. And I think there's something about that. I learned that when you make yourself vulnerable, there's something about students realizing that by making yourself vulnerable, they can trust you. And then with that, I can take kids and get them to re-engage in learning and to be successful. And over the years, kids would say, "Mr. McNeil, you need to go tell these stories to adults." I said, "What?" And they said, we love your stories, but the adults need to hear them. And so, of course, in this community, where did I end up? In Sharon's living room. And and I was terrified that she would not let me share a story. And I realized she wanted me to share a story. She wanted me to share a story, and I wanted to work with her because she was brutally honest. No mercy. You need to stop saying, you need to cut that out. You need to get right to the point. And it wasn't just beginning and middle. I got from her, and there needs to be something transformative. You know, when we go through stories where we transform, that's where we make human connections. And I wanted to get up here and just say, I'm so glad to hear that people are going to make an effort to continue the story project. Because I think, here's my perspective, I think Sharon understood that to build community, we have at some point we have to make ourselves vulnerable. And we do that not just through story, but through true personal stories. I have since gone up to Denver. I've been in moth slams. I've won 6 moth slams. I've done their grand slams. I've been on the Risk radio show. And it all started with her giving me the confidence to say, yes, people do want to hear your story. Not just your students, but adults. And I think when I've been in those moth slams, I want you to understand something. I go to those not just to tell stories, but I stopped attending the Mormon church in the 90s. I was going to take a break, and, well, it's been a big break. And what I missed was the community. And I don't know if you know this, but once a month they do a fast and testimony meeting. And it's where they're supposed to bear their testimony. But it was always story hour. There were always people that wanted to get up and share story, because I think humans understand that's how we connect with each other. And I found that again here in the Story Project. And I found it at the Moth. And there's lots of very funny stories, and it's fun to be a part of those. But there are moments when people make themselves incredibly vulnerable. And I think it's in those moments where you have a community where you feel safe, that it's incredibly therapeutic. And I think Sharon understood that too. And I'm so grateful she gave me a chance to do that here, and to give me the courage to go and do that elsewhere, and to see that sometimes those stories do matter to other people. When students come up to me and say, Mr. McNeil, thank you for talking about that, because nobody else in my life talks about things like this. So I just wanted to leave here tonight and let you know that how much I am grateful for what Sharon provided, and how grateful I am that someone's going to attempt to continue to build community through this Story Project.
The way I would really describe Sharon is she was the storyteller's storyteller. And I was encouraged to do, well, encouraged is probably too soft a word. I was nagged relentlessly to do the Story Project. And, you know, at first I was like, what is this thing? And so she explained it to me. And, you know, I had to do, actually, I didn't have to go to her living room. She came to the den of my house. The interrogation was the same as everybody else has described, but it was in my home, not hers. And she wanted me to tell the stories of this inn that we owned and its occupants of yesteryear, i.e. ghosts. So I was supposed to stand up and tell the truth about something that's a fantasy, or that can neither be confirmed or denied. The existence of ghosts in a building. So I had to tell the truth in my story about something that most people don't believe. But people who stayed at that inn experienced. And, you know, I have spoken a lot teaching classes as a teacher in college. So I can either speak for 50 minutes or an hour and 20 minutes, depending on whether it's Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or Tuesday or Thursday. I can't speak for 15 minutes. You know, I just couldn't do it. But she took my 50-minute, you know, too long ghost stories and showed me exactly how to, you know, this is where they will laugh. That word is wrong. Take this chunk out. That's really a lot more important than you're giving emphasis to. I mean, and, you know, when I did it the first time for her, I can still see her sitting on that leather couch in the den with her arms folded, taking these mental notes. I don't think she wrote anything down, but I could almost see with her eyes that she was like, I could see her writing, you know, bullet point A, B, C, and she didn't say a thing the whole time I was doing it. But at the end, I mean, she went down this list that I couldn't see, but she could see, and she was absolutely right. I mean, people laughed exactly where she said they were going to laugh. Much harder than I thought they would laugh. And, you know, to watch somebody teach somebody who talks for a living how to tell a story is pretty presumptuous, but she was really good at it. I mean, if you think about some of the people that did story time, they were college professors who stand up and talk. They were school teachers who stand up and talk every day, all day long. They were lawyers, they were judges, they were artists, they were performers. What gave Sharon the ability or the right to teach us to be storytellers? But she did. I mean, nobody ever asked for her credentials. She just, the power of her. And she was right there. But you saw it in action. And, I think I'm honored and blessed to have been a part of that. And it was actually my lawyer who summed up, the ghost stories at the end, much shorter than I think Sharon would even want. And that's his line, that I should tell the public, I can neither confirm nor deny the existence of ghosts in the building. So that was the short version of it. But, when you have a building like that, and somebody comes to you and they tell you an experience that they had with, a ghost, and yes, they do actually make people's hair stand up sometimes. So I think that might have been Sharon's connection, because it could be the explanation for the hair, I don't know. It could be haunted, because the hair apparently has electrical properties that is, especially to the spirit world, and energy that is different than any other part of the body. In Orthodox Judaism, they actually say, don't cut the corners of your hair. And so if you've ever seen those little curly things on the sides of people's heads that are Orthodox Jews, they're called peyos, but there's 4 of them, and they're in the corners. And it actually says in the Bible not to cut the corners of your hair, nor the corners of the field in agriculture. So you should go in a curve and leave the corner. Just don't harvest that food. Leave it there for the poor. That's word for word what it says. I mean, almost word for word what it says. So the point is, there's a special energy in hair that is different. And ghosts, I actually saw this happen. Ghosts can really work through that. And I think it was on the 3rd floor of a ghost hunt that we had. I can't remember what TV channel was there, but there was this news reporter, and she's sitting there taking notes, and she's got her camera guy, with all this equipment, and they're doing an interview with the ghosts, so this ghost hunting group. And one of the guys had, I don't know, how long do you think his blonde hair was? I mean, it was like down to the middle of his chest, maybe. Really straight blonde hair. And he says, out loud to the ghost, it's like, if you're here, just show me a sign that you're here. And this blonde hair, which was laying perfectly straight vertically, starts to go up in the air, like so. I mean, not just one strand or two, the whole head. And we're standing there just kind of watching it going. The news reporter goes flying off the 3rd floor, leaves the building, and says, I can't handle this. And she's gone. She's gone. She left the cameraman in the dust, but so that's how I know that hair can be haunted. And so maybe that's the explanation for Sharon, that she had a very special energy, and it came in through that hair. So. But, what she really did for, I think, all of us in the Story Project was she could take things that she could see that even the storyteller, whose material it was, missed. And she could put a spotlight on it and say, this is here. As an example, there's a story. This guy, he just made a few dollars on storytelling. His name's Dan Brown. He Da Vinci Code. You might have heard of the story. Anyway, he talks about something in there, the scientific point of creation. From an evolutionary, it's a very scientific standpoint. And he talks about something called the Fibonacci sequence. And I don't know, if some of the nerds in the room, I'm sure you know exactly what the Fibonacci sequence is, but the Fibonacci sequence is a weird set of numbers that is created from itself. So you take the 2 numbers that precede it, and that produces the 3rd number. You add the 2 before it. So it starts with 0, and then the second number is 1. So if you add 0 and 1 together, what's the 3rd number? 1. So what's the 4th number? And 5, 8, 13. Do some of these numbers sound familiar? 21. So the Fibonacci sequence is a growth sequence that's built into math. You might recognize some of the numbers that are on that line. A credit card is 2 inches by 3 inches. The keys on a piano, 3s, 2s, 5s, all those kinds of numbers. The dimensions of Noah's Ark, all Fibonacci sequence numbers. The dimensions of the Ark of the Covenant in the Old Testament, all Fibonacci sequence numbers. So they show up over and over again. And if you keep going, you realize, wait, these ages make sense. 0, you don't exist. 1 is the year in the womb. The second 1 is the first year of life outside the womb. And then there's a 2, and those are all stages of life if you actually think about it, including 13. So that's the science. And then there's a lot of people that say, well, the Bible's just a story. It's a fairy tale. It has nothing to do with reality or science. And, how could any of these things be true? 7 days, come on. It took billions and billions of years to, create all this. Well, maybe it did, maybe it didn't. How do you measure time if those planets that we measure time by weren't in place until 3.5 days into creation? How do you time how long the first 3.5 days were if nothing that we use to gauge those by existed? So there could be billions of years in those first 3.5 days, who knows? Anyway, it was a story. But Sharon, one day when I was talking to her, she could summarize something and say, well, why can't these two things exist? They're both fine. Here's the point of this one, here's the point of that one. No, it's the same. There's two stories of the same thing. All right, so here's the Fibonacci sequence in Story of Creation. What's the first line of creation? It talks about the nothingness that existed. So if you had to turn nothingness into a number, what would you pick? 0, yeah. Oneness, what number might you pick? Well, 1. So a 0, so the oneness divided the nothingness is the literal translation of that first line of creation. The Fibonacci sequence is often described by another thing. When you divide the two numbers all the way down the line, you get this weird number, 1.68. It's like pi, but it's called phi. It never repeats. It's a Greek letter. Does anybody know what it looks like? It's a 0 with a straight line through it. That's phi. Yeah. Does it sound familiar to what we've been talking about? And what does the science say? Fibonacci sequence. This is the mathematical growth sequence of the whole world. 0 and 1 are the first two components. What does the Old Testament say? The nothingness was divided by the oneness. It's all the same. Phi, Fibonacci, science, math, God. It's all the same. Sharon. And it came in through the hair. That's the most important part to remember. It comes in through the hair. So, anyway, thank you. The other little business keeping thing that I have for you is on the table back here, there are little envelopes, relics of the past, that actually have an address on them that says Temple Shalom and has a street address on Monument Street. Those envelopes, if you'd like, can be used. You have to put one of these things in the corner called a postage stamp. It goes up in the upper right, and you can't email the envelopes, so don't try. And you can put your address in the top left-hand corner. And if you put anything in there, money, a check, please don't put a credit card in there, and just let it go to Temple Shalom. Temple Shalom will know that it's for Sharon. And there are two things that, in her memory, are being done through Temple Shalom. One is a memorial plaque that will be in the synagogue, and the other is the gravestone for Sharon that will be in the cemetery. And so anything donated through that to Temple Shalom will go to those two things. And if there's any excess above what's needed to accomplish those two things, it will be put to something in Sharon's name, in memory of Sharon, through Temple Shalom. So if you don't want to use an envelope to do that, you can actually pick up the telephone and call Temple Shalom. And if you ask for Elena, who's the executive director, and say that you just want some money to go to, the Sharon's Memorial Fund, she can get it there by telephone. Or if you're computer savvy, you can use the simplest way there is, and that's templeshalom.com. Don't go to .org, that's somebody else. It's templeshalom.com, and when the homepage comes up, there'll be a little thing I think it's in the bottom corner, that says, if you want to donate, click here. That's what you do. Click there, and a page will come up, and it's really quite simple. If you're a member, you can sign in and log in, but if you scroll down a little bit, you don't have to do that. You can just be a guest, and you just fill out the basic information about who you are, name, rank, serial number, telephone number, all that, stuff, so that Temple Shalom can steal your personality. No, so they can process your credit card. And you can put credit card information in there, and the only real thing to remember is there's a comments box. Just put Sharon Freeman's name in there, and they'll know what to do with it. And because it's a nonprofit organization, there's one scroll bar that says, where do you want the money to go? And if you pull it down, there's like a gazillion funds, this legacy fund and that legacy fund. And there's one called General Fund. That's what you want to pick. Because then the temple can direct it to where it needs to go. If you put it in the library fund, they can't spend it on anything but the library. So general fund, just remember that. So that's all you got to remember. General fund on the first page. Thank you.
So I got a Fibonacci number because there are 3 things that I didn't hear said tonight that I think we all share. The fashion, spirit, and love. So I did not plan to talk tonight. I just wanted to, this was hard for me. To know that Sharon passed felt like some part of the community passed, like an era passed by, and also just I'm not still, I don't even know all the ways that we might miss her, and that I miss her, and I thought about her so much this fall, and I just wasn't ready. But who's ever ready? But the thing is that, anytime I knew I was going to see Sharon, I was always like, what am I going to wear? And the way that she did fashion, especially as somebody, as an elder, really, really inspired me. And I looked in my closet and I was like, God, I think over the years I've really developed some really good Sharon-y styles. And I'm so proud of that. I love my closet. It's really Sharon inspired in a lot of ways. But the first time I had this thought, I really don't know how I met Sharon, because there's Mitzi and Julie and the kids, and we were with the kids and the family, and we were eating, and there was Seder. But I think, I think that our first interaction that was important and about fashion was that she asked me to come and play music for a party, and she was gonna pay me money. I was like, whoa, you wanna pay me money to play music at your house? And I wanted to, and I was excited about it, but I was like, oh, what am I gonna wear? Sharon's fashion is so great. And so I think she was gonna pay me maybe $75, and I was like, that's a lot of money. I'm gonna go to Terra Verde, and I'm gonna get a good outfit. And so I spent $200 on I still have. I think I still have it. I don't know. I remember it just was important to me to show up well dressed. So that, fashion and party, some birthday party she had in the middle of the fire. Who was there? The show must go on with Sharon, and the fashion has to be a part of it. In the middle of the fire, and the city's filled with smoke. We're in Sharon's backyard with a klezmer band. And it was amazing and wonderful. And she didn't even consider canceling the party, and I'm so glad, because I think it gave us so much hope. Oh yeah, Mizmar Madness and the klezmer band. It was just exciting and fashionable, and our houses were always cool. And such an inspiration. So there's that. And then there's spirit. Like, just everything Sharon did involved spirit. And this is like, my feelings about death are not the conflict right now. It's my personal, like, that I miss her. But when I was really little, and I was somebody I knew that was an elder, I met once, and then they died, and for some reason I was like little enough to remember what that was like before life. And I was like elated, and I was so like 4 years old, and I was like so happy for this person who died. I was like, yeah, it's good. And like I knew that at 4, but I knew that I wasn't like supposed to act like that. But I have that feeling of like the beauty of wherever you are now, Sharon, and excitement for you. And I just really miss you. And the last thing is that, like, love. I don't remember the first time Sharon said, I love you to me, but she always did in the most sincere way. And tonight when I saw Bob, I was like, I wonder if I've ever said I love you to Bob. Like, and I said it, like, in this certain way that, like, chilled me to the bone. Like, I was like, that's how she said I love you. And I wonder if we say how much we love each other, and if she might have inspired us to do that. So.
Please join us on March 10th, and we're going to be for the next year working with the library, co-producing the story project. Please join us for the next one. Thank you. Thanks for being here.